Hey, Carl, what's up?
Hey, Brandy, you got me?
Yep, I believe we are live. Let me just double check.
Trying to see where the light is hitting. I'll figure it out.
Yep, we're live. Okay. So, hey, everyone. Thanks for coming back to my channel. I am your fave nurse B. Today, we have a special guest. Carl is back on from ENTP Life. He has a YouTube channel where he talks about how to start your own home health care agency. So Carl has already done this before on the East Coast. Right now, he's out in Florida and he's basically doing it from scratch, but with all of his knowledge from when he started on the East Coast. So he's going to be doing step by step, showing you all how to start your own home health care agency. And today he's coming on to talk about the difference between home health care and staffing agency, which I'm still trying to figure out the difference. So, Carl, do you want to go into it right now?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me on. I absolutely love this, teaching the community how to proceed into healthcare businesses. My experiences in healthcare staffing and in home healthcare. I've had both a home healthcare agency as well as a nurse staffing firm. So I guess I'll start with a nurse staffing firm first, because that's where kind of the foundation was laid for moving into home care. So back in 1996, my mother had the idea of starting a nurse staffing firm because she was working for a nurse staffing firm and she saw their invoice. And she saw exactly, she saw the spread between what the agency was making and what she was getting paid. And she figured, hey, she could probably do the same thing. She also saw that at her nursing facility, they were using what they term, agency nurses, and figured, hey, you know what? I could probably approach my nursing facility to subcontract nurses that I know from my other jobs and start the business that way. So that's where the idea came from. So once she got started, my mom till this day does not know how to use a computer that well. She could get around, she could draft emails, but as far as her skills on Excel, Microsoft Office, they're pretty weak. So as everything was coming together, when it was time to create forms, time to create timesheets, everything that she needed, she always turned to me, who was kind of like the kid that was on the computer more often. So it's like, hey, I need this. I heard you could do it on Microsoft Word, or I heard you could do it on Microsoft Excel. So that's where I started, is supporting mom. I went to college. I started going to college in 2000. And then I transferred from the university that was kind of local to us, and I went away the next year. And I would always commute back and forth. So I grew up in Queens, New York, and my college was in Long Island. So I was living on campus at Stony Brook University. And whenever I would travel back to Queens, I would always come across different skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes on the way. And I was like, hey, you know what, there's opportunities for us to expand out into Long Island, because our main area of focus was the 5 boroughs. And she was like, well, if that's how you feel, why don't you do it yourself? Okay, so let's do it. So in 2000 and what year was it? 2006, I launched my own staffing firm. And I basically focused on the 2 counties of Long Island, or Nassau and Suffolk County. And she kept with her operation in the New York City area, in the 5 boroughs. And at the same time, like as all that was happening, we also applied for our home healthcare license, which was kind of just sitting in the background for a lot of years. We got licensed in 2001, and we didn't start providing home care services until 2010. So that's, any questions so far?
No, everybody's just coming in.
Gotcha, cool. So that's kind of like the back history of how I even got involved in like being a healthcare entrepreneur. It's really piggybacking off of my mom's experience and kind of seeing where the gaps were, and applying what I was learning in college at the same time to expand on what was this small family business. One thing that I think is really important to stress, I know that a lot of the people who are following are either nurses or aspiring nurses. There's a lot of opportunity in healthcare to kind of, carve out your own small business. I know I saw there was a nurse practitioner that was on. She does nurse aid trainings. You could also do like home health aid trainings. You can even do LPN schools in certain jurisdictions. And that's just one avenue, but staff firms another. There's so many little nuances to healthcare that, especially as a nurse, you can identify where you could get in and create, your own business there.
Right.
And I think a staffing firm is kind of one of the easiest because every nurse goes to nursing school. They typically make friends with the people that they've gone to school with, and they tend to make friends with the nurses that they work with wherever they end up working. That right there could be like your initial crew that you use in your staffing firm or in your home healthcare agency to be the service providers. You could start working with your friends, people that you know, and they're going to be more willing to kind of deal with you when maybe payroll is slow or delayed because you haven't gotten paid, things like that. And they understand your hustle, and they usually are going to ride with you a little more than a stranger. So being a healthcare professional, keep your eyes open to what's happening in your facility. Like my mom saw agency nurses being used in her facility. She was also working for one, and it was like, well, here's an opportunity for me to do the same. Let me just try to figure out the mechanics. All right. So that takes us to through the background and that sort of thing.
One moment. If you all are just coming in, Karl just gave us his backstory on how he got started in home health care and also staffing agencies. So he has experience in both areas. And you got about how many years of experience?
Oh, man. 96 till now, is that 24 years?
Wow. So he's got some experience. Yeah. And if you all are just now checking in, make sure you go over to his channel after this live. I'm going to put a link down below. And he's doing videos showing you how to start your own home healthcare agency. So go over to his channel after this live. But right now, we're going to talk about the difference between home care agencies and staffing agencies. And then at the end of this video, if we have time, we're going to answer a few questions as well. So.
Okay. So I'm going to dive into the difference between the nurse staffing firms, which are commonly referred to as agencies. They're not really agencies because an agency charges a fee to the employee. A staffing firm charges a fee to the employer. And that's a critical difference, especially in New York, because in New York, there's a license that you have to take if you're charging the employee for any services that you're providing them as it relates to getting them employment. Not the same with a staffing firm, okay? So, but it's just that in the industry, they just call it agency for whatever reason that is, but it's truly a staffing firm. And at times they also refer to it as a nurse's registry.
Okay.
Now, a staffing firm in most states is not regulated by the Department of Health. So you don't need a license, and you can pretty much get started with maybe $1,000, right? So that's, incorporating yourself, getting your initial staffing agreement or staffing contract, and opening a bank account, and you're pretty much ready to be in business, right? So it's a very low barrier to entry if you're in a state that doesn't require you to have a license for a nurse's registry or a healthcare related staffing firm. I thought that was the case nationwide, but here in Florida, if you're going to have a nurse's registry, you have to be licensed by essentially their Department of Health. And I guess the logic is that they expect you to be, I guess, adhering to the same regulations as hospitals and other healthcare providers, since you are employing healthcare professionals. So they want you to have a license and be aware of the regulations, and I guess have some oversight of what you're doing. Okay. So I looked at the application because I'm probably going to be scaling up a staffing firm here in Florida as well, under my new company, AidBook. So we are looking at that application, and it seems pretty basic in comparison to the home healthcare licensing application, mainly because when you're dealing with the staffing firm or the nurses registry, you're dealing with professionals working in a facility, right? So there's going to be structure and oversight of those workers, and that facility is going to be regulated and monitored by the accreditation agencies or Department of Health. When it's a home healthcare agency, it's going to be a little more involved because you are the facility in theory. So you're making sure that all the employees are functioning according to the regulations. So you need to demonstrate that you have policies and procedures in place for your practice. Meanwhile, the nurses in the nurse registry are following the policy and procedures that have already been approved. So it's, the lights went out. Give me 1 second. Actually, that's not bad, is it?
What?
The view, because the lights in the background are like.
Oh, let me see what we're looking like. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
It's fine, right? Yeah, okay.
Giving an ambiance, a little nighttime ambiance.
I'll bring this closer just to light me up a little bit. Cool.
I got one quick question. Okay.
Sure.
Can we go back a little bit and tell me what does it look like for the employee if I were to work for a staffing firm versus an agency? Because I'm just a little
staffing firm versus.
Versus because you said with the home health care, you basically have to create that structure, right? Versus if you working for a staffing firm, you're going out to the facilities and that's already there.
Right. So how does it look for, so you're a nurse and you're looking to work for a home care agency versus a staffing firm, and what is your experience going to be like working for each? That's the question.
Yeah, is it just the difference of when I go to a home healthcare agency, right? The right terminology, I'm going to be doing home health.
Correct.
I'm going to be in people's house.
Or you could even be a case manager that's working only from an office.
Okay. And then if I'm working for a staffing firm, then I go to them and they tell me, hey, we have openings at this facility, go work at this facility. Yeah,
or it could even be working for a home care agency.
Oh.
Right. So the staffing firm, all they're doing is satisfying someone else's staffing shortages.
Okay.
Right. So it could be a doctor's office, it could be an outpatient facility, it could be a hospital, nursing home, it could be a home care agency that's hiring you, it could be a school that's in need of school nurses, it could be anybody. Right. So it's just, where do we need this nurse? And I'm the provider of that nurse. When you look at the home healthcare agency, all the services are going to be centered around the client, around the patient. So either the staff is going to be dispatched to someone's home to provide direct care to that client, or they're going to be working on the administrative side, handling, charting, reviewing of care plans, and there's sometimes initiating care plans if they're in the field doing assessments, or they're going to be higher level administration, just making sure that your quality assurance and quality improvement program is running the way that it's supposed to, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So from the employee's perspective, it's just a matter of what role you're looking to take. And the employee always has an option as to what type of jobs they want. If they go to a staffing firm, they could say, I don't want to work in home care. I prefer hospitals, I prefer med-surg, I prefer ICU. They could specify where they want to work. And if that staffing firm has that contract or has that opening, then they'll keep placing there.
Okay.
Right? With the home care agency, it's going to be really, do you want to be inside or outside? Right? Or do you want to be an educator? Right? Because they could be responsible for the training of home health aides within the organization, the continuous education, or even the initial training. That's really up to them. They could administer your flu program, your flu shot program, or your vaccination program. So as a nurse, they have options in both areas, whether they want to be direct patient care or administrative. Both options are going to exist for them.
Okay. All right. Did I mess up your train of thought? Sorry.
No, it's all good. So essentially, back just to the staffing firm, the barrier to entry is lower because it usually doesn't require a license. and the startup costs are minimal. I say minimal because to get started, you're not going to need much capital, but it can be capital intensive because you're usually negotiating contracts that are net 30 days, net 60 days, or even 90 days from the time that the service was provided to the time that you get paid. So you're going to have to carry those nursing salaries until the nursing facility pays you. Okay. So, yeah, you could get started with $1,000, but unless you're staffing you and your friends who are going to wait for the money to come in, you're going to have a problem paying your staff. So you're going to either need access to capital or like a line of credit, because you can essentially provide the service, have an invoice, and then prove to some sort of bank or sort of lender that you have money coming in, right? So they can front you some money or factor you some money so that you're able to cover your payroll. And then when your reimbursement comes in, you pay them back and you make the difference, right? Or you could just have the money available and you kind of front running it until you get reimbursed. Okay. But for as little as $1,000, I think you could get started for sure. So that's the starting of a staffing firm, right? So if you go back, you see that you need your company, the entity that you're going to create, whether it's a corporation or LLC. You're going to need your staffing firm contract and agreement, and you're going to need staff to dispatch, okay? And your role is going to more or less be to middleman between the two. You got to establish your contracts with the facilities that need the nurses, nurse aides, respiratory therapists, x-ray techs, whatever it is that you're specializing in. And then you're going to need the staff that can fill that void. Moving towards a home healthcare agency. In most states, there's like a separation between the two types of home healthcare agencies, usually referred to as like a Medicaid agency, which predominantly concentrates on long-term care, or and they also call them private duty as well, or a skilled nursing licensure, which is going to focus on skilled care, skilled nursing care, PT, OT, those sort of Medicare type services, and are usually dealing with short-term care. And they're usually licensed separately. In Florida, you're actually allowed under the same license to do both. You just have to get approved for each phase or each service type independently. Like you could do unskilled private duty, you could do skilled private duty, and then you could then petition for Medicare accreditation. So you could actually do everything under one umbrella. Now, if you're going to get started as a home healthcare agency, remember, you're actually a practice. Your process is going to be very similar to starting an assisted living facility, a nursing home, a hospital. You're going to have robust policies that govern how do you go about employing your staff, how do you go about servicing your clients, how do you go about maintaining compliance, how do you screen, how do you report to the state, how do you report fraud, waste, and abuse, how do you control that within your facility. You're going to have policies on all of those things. And the issue there is that it takes, if you're doing it from scratch without ever doing this before, it takes you literally years to put it together, because you're going to be, it took us years. I think maybe 4 or 5 years for our first license, because we're sitting there kind of borrowing forms from different nursing facilities, trying to find it. And you have to remember, this is like 1997 to 2001 timeframe. So that's like Web 1.0. You couldn't just go into your AOL search and search home healthcare policy and procedures manual, New York City, and actually find somebody who published their policy and procedures. No, you had to, like,
hard to find that now, it seems like, because everybody's like, people don't always put out how to start one. I've heard people say it's pretty hard now.
Yeah, they don't put it out. They don't put out how to start one. And I think that's just fear. But like, people aren't really publishing their entire policies and procedures through a link on their website, right? Because first of all, their websites are usually very bare bones. And second of all, they're like, I took 5 years to draft these policies. I don't need anybody ripping mine, right? They're going to have to go through it the hard way and rip their own. So, that could be the thinking. But Now you could find pieces of other people's processes and really pull it together, but you still have to retype it. You still have to change company names. You have to redesign the headers so that they have your address, everything. It's so much more of a complex process because like I said, it's like you're opening up your own nursing facility because you're responsible for the patient's records, you're responsible for the patient's care, you're responsible for the staff, you're responsible for their training, their retraining, them keeping up to date with their licenses. It's a lot. And that's kind of why I think a lot of people just shy away from it. And that's why I wanted to talk about the staffing firm, because you can make the same amount of money with less regulation, right? So
that was going to be my next question is, so there must be more money in the agency versus staffing firm.
It's different. It's like different needs, right? When you're dealing with the staffing firm, you're satisfying the need of the employer. I'm short-staffed. Whenever they get out of that situation, then they may not require your services anymore. Right. If you're dealing with somebody who's chronically ill, the only way they're really getting away is if they pass away. They're going to need that service for the rest of their life. So, it's I guess longevity of the business, especially if you're providing long-term care. If you're providing short-term care, then it's kind of like functioning no different than a hospital, addressing the needs of someone now. It's just a matter of having enough of a flow that it makes it worthwhile. But it's way more oversight. You can make the same money doing both, and one is without regulation and without the state breathing down your neck, and the other kind of has like more like it's almost like there's more people, right? So there's more potential customers that you could reach. There's more people who are receiving home care than there are hospitals and nursing facilities, right? Okay. So, you have a smaller, I guess, market size when you're dealing with who your customer is. Okay. When you compare one to the next. But the margins are pretty small in home health care as well. A lot of people think, you can make tons of money because you could scale up, the size of your practice and run it from the same operation. But the margins in home health care are going to be around 11 to 13%, right? Meanwhile, in a staffing firm, I could charge a 50% markup over what I'm paying my staff. I can't do that in home health care because it's typically just not priced out that way, especially if you're dealing with Medicare and Medicaid clients where they're setting the price, right? When in a staffing firm, you could set the price based on, what the market conditions are, or how desperate that facility is to find staff. Because you already know that in order to cover their shifts, they're at least paying time and a half.
Right.
And they're paying time. Yeah, they're paying time and a half, plus the employer taxes, plus the workers' comp bill. So if you come in at time and a half as your rate, and it doesn't include those extra costs of employer taxes and workers' comp, then you're actually cheaper than their overtime. And that overtime is 50% more than what you're charging. So that spread, you end up probably making like a 30% spread in that particular scenario, because you're going to lose some to workers' comp, you're going to lose some to taxes, right? So, and that's going to be probably around 16, 17% of loss. So tip, if you're going to start a staffing firm, don't charge less than 30% above what you're going to be paying your aides. I mean, or your, not your aides, but all of the people who are working within your firm. If you're charging anything below 30% above the rate, you're not going to really make much money.
Can you do like an example? So say, for example, I work for an agency and I get paid $30 an hour as an LPN.
Right. You should charge a minimum of $39.
Okay. So the staffing firm that I work for more than likely is going to be charging about $39 to that facility.
They're probably charging $45.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you said if you at least charge 30% more than
then the rate that you're paying the workers,
Okay.
you should make money.
Okay.
Because, you know, one thing that people really don't know, and this is something that I figured out when we first did our first payroll. I did my first payroll, right? 14 years old, calling up ADP, setting up ADP. And I think our payroll was like $2,500 or something like that, right? So first payroll rolls out, and then we get in like a deduction from our bank account of like $2,800 and change. And I was like, I thought payroll was $2,500. And they were like, that's employer tax. And I was like, employer tax? I was like, why the hell am I getting taxed? If I thought you get taxed as the employee. They're like, no, the employee gets taxed too. So that's anywhere between like 7 to 11%, depending on your state. Like if you have a state tax or you don't have a state tax, but that's going to be Medicare and your federal taxes, plus your state and unemployment costs and disability costs. So it's going to be around, like I said, on the low end, 7%. On the higher end, like New York, California, you're looking at 11, 12% over your cost. Then you have workers' comp, right? You have to cover the workers' comp on healthcare workers. And that's usually like the national average is around 6 to 7%, right? For if you're working directly with patients. So that's, you know, your 6% to 7% loss. So you're looking at like 15 to 18% that you're going to be giving up in just the cost to employ somebody. Right? So obviously, if you're charging a 30% markup, that 12% spread is now yours. If you're charging a 50% markup, even better. And that's still cheaper for this facility than the OT rate.
Right. When you look at the big picture versus just looking at how much they're paying the staff for that hour, or, you know,
And that's something important. If like, let's just say you're negotiating a contract with a nursing facility, it's important that you talk to people who have a good understanding of the financial cost, because sometimes the director of nursing, who might be the one who's taking on new contracts, is going to be like, you're trying to charge a 50% markup, and they don't really know the financials behind what it costs to employ someone at their facility. So, you know, you have the wages, the workers' comp, your liability insurance, right? If you're covering that. You have your employer's tax, and then you have the cost of their benefits package, pay time off, and their healthcare benefits. What is the true total cost per an hour to employ that full-time worker? So if you're able to come at a price that is, you know, first of all, if it's cheaper than their entire cost to employ somebody, and you're able to make money, then you have a win there. But if you're able to come in between that all-in number for them for regular time and the OT rate, that's typically where you're going to end up as far as what they're going to be willing to pay you. Now, if they're very desperate and they can't even cover their shifts with overtime within their own facility, then you can really start hitting them in the head for double the rate or whatever the case may be. But that relationship may not last that long, because once they get their situation settled, you're the biggest expense they have for human capital. So, you know, they're going to cut you. So it's better to be in that range between, like I said, the all-in cost to employ per an hour and the OT rate.
Okay.
So switching back to home health care, the licensing process is usually the barrier of entry for most people. Either because the state isn't issuing any licenses like it is in New York. Like New York, there's a hold on issuing of all new licenses, or it's just hard to put together. Another barrier to entry for home care agencies is that even if you're going the Medicaid route, some states are requiring you to have a minimal capitalization or a minimal amount of money to start your business, because they don't want to license you and then you get started and then you get jammed up because you can't cover payroll. So in Florida, the expectation is that you have $100,000 cash reserves. In some states, it's $250,000 cash reserve. In some states, they don't have that requirement, and it varies state to state. So every state's guidelines are different. and their recommendations are different. So aside from drafting, tons of policies, you're also going to have your facility when you put in your application, like your office. Most states don't want you to have your office in your home, so you have to lease out space while you're waiting for them to process your application.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, okay.
Another thing is they're going to also require that you have a director of nursing on board on your staff, or like a medical director as a physician. So if you're not that, which I'm not a nurse, you're going to need to bring on a partner or an employee to fill that role. So if you're waiting for your licensing and they're supposed to be an employee and they're parking up their license with you, you're going to have to carry that cost as well. So you got your office expenses, you have your personnel expenses, all while you're still pending your approval. And if you didn't do your policies correctly, they're going to kick it back and say, this, you need to adjust this. This doesn't match the regs. And they're going to leave it like that. Please reference regulation, blah, 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 blah. This policy is inadequate. So then you redraft it, send it back, wait 30 days to 60 days, and you get an answer. Oh, this policy that was already in there the first time doesn't match. Send it back. It's crazy, man. And what one binder, like one policy and procedures may be approved by one like auditor, right? And it meets the requirements, but in the same health system, a different auditor will deny that package because they don't like the language in your policy, right? So
can't get the same guy or girl.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you could get. Yeah, it's absolutely bananas. So for me in this venture, I decided to go the consulting route. So I found a consultant that's proven in the area, that's nationally recognized. Screened a couple of them actually, then the one that I ended up choosing seemed to be the best fit. And my startup costs are probably going to come in at around $50,000 for my consultation fees, for my licensing fees, for my accreditation fees, and the carrying of my office space and that sort of stuff. So that's like, and that's aside from the $100,000 minimum requirement for when you get started. That's separate from the startup cost. So about $150K to get started here in Florida if I want to have a Medicare and private duty agency. So, but once you get started, I think the operation is more or less the same because you're playing the game of staff to who's in need, right? So you have to have a really clear sense of how you're going to recruit the personnel that you need. And you're obviously going to need a place to send them to go to work. And then you're just making the difference between what you're billing and what you're paying out. And once you're into the groove of things, it's essentially the same business, except in home healthcare, you have more oversight of what's happening in the charts. For example, if I have a nurse working in my home healthcare agency, right? They have to do their initial assessment. They have to design the care plan. We have to have the care plan signed by the doctor. And we have to have the evaluations of the people who are providing the actual care, right? And that's the agency's responsibility, right? So aside from matching our nurse with whoever is in need of services at home, we have that burden of making sure that our records are to the state standards, right? But at a staffing firm, I send a nurse to nursing home A, right? Long life nursing home. And it's that nursing facility's responsibility to make sure the charting's on point, to make sure the note taking's on point, to make sure everything is according to the standard. So it's no longer your responsibility as a staffing firm. Your responsibility is to find good quality staff that can do the work. But aside from maintaining the records and having those records for 7 years and being able to get penalized for something 4 years down the line when the money is spent, doesn't exist, right? You could come in and get audited and they say, oh, we don't like this is missing a signature, you're missing a signature here, and $50,000 of services needs to be credited back. That those type of things happen. So, in the grand scheme of things, if I were to say which is better in talking about this out loud, I think the staffing firm is better, honestly. It really is, because you're able to make, equivalent money. You're able to operate in multiple states, typically without licensing. Barrier to entry is lower, and you have less oversight. Home healthcare is just different. You have to like all of the full, you're going to have to want to run a full operation, right? You're going to want that, because if not, it's going to burn you out, because you're constantly under pressure to satisfy the client, the patient, right? To just satisfy them so that they're happy with the service. Then you need to make sure that your staff is working according to, the standard that you set for your company. And then you have to satisfy the state. So you have a lot of people kind of pushing on you to get things to be a certain way, where you don't have that same pressure in a staffing firm. It's a different feel. But if you are passionate about patient prognosis and improving the quality of people's lives, and kind of solving and addressing the problems within your community or within a certain population as far as disease is concerned, then home care might be for you. But it's an industry of love, I would have to say. Like, you have to kind of want to make a difference. If not, then it doesn't make sense to deal with the torture. It really, in my opinion.
And you probably attract different employees. Different type of employees.
It's hard. I think it's actually harder to attract home healthcare employees.
Yeah, from what I've seen, because I don't think I would ever do home health.
Yeah, because the stories that come out of home health.
Yeah.
You work in nursing facilities, and so you see some of the interactions. You see some, but imagine walking into somebody's house in the hood, and a patient is telling your aide, go downstairs and panhandle so that I could buy some drugs later. And if you don't do it, I'm going to call the agency and have them send me another aide. Right? Those type of things don't happen in a nursing facility. But in home health care, that happens. Goes down. It goes down. Yeah. All kinds of craziness, man. And it's like, and you look at it, you have somebody whose wages depend on satisfying this client. What they're going to find themselves in a weird predicament. If they report it, they lose their job. If they don't do it, they lose their job. If they do it, they lose their job. So they gotta, to deal with that. It's crazy. You have like infested houses, like drug activity in the house, or like a problematic teenage, grandchild in the house. Oh my God, man, it's a lot, but it has its benefits. You could really see that your efforts are improving someone's life. You could see that their condition improves, or that their decline is stopped. You get to see that you're able to employ, like in home health, a home health aide is like very entry level for healthcare, right? Similar to a nurse aide, and they do a lot of work, and it attracts people who want to help, that may not have the resources to go to nursing school, or may not have the educational background to go to nursing school. And you're able to actually develop them, get them into a job that allows them to provide for their family, and even plant the seed in their head that they can do more. That they're seeing how nurses come in for their assessments, that they're in and out for an hour, and they're getting paid 4 times, or in that 1 hour they might make what I make in a day. And it starts to they start to position themselves a little differently, or they start to look at the business a little differently. So that's satisfying to see that you're able to potentially develop somebody from unemployed to caregiver to nursing professional, and so on. So those are the things that are pretty satisfying in home healthcare versus staffing firm.
Okay, so do you think that the 150K that you said is typical? I know that you said the 100 minimum that you have to have for Florida is probably, you know, specific to Florida or other states that do it. But would you say that that's around the typical amount that a person would need to start?
I would say yes, because you're gonna have to show the 100. Once again, the same flicker. You're gonna have to show the 100K for Medicare too. So Medicare, because there's a lag between when you bill Medicare services and they reimburse you. So they want to make sure that you don't go belly up and they don't have you in their system. And 3 months from now, you're closing because you can't pay your staff, or they don't want that problem. They don't want that headache. They don't want that phone call. We reimburse in 30 days and that's it.
Yeah.
Deal with it. So have enough money to float it. So that, and Medicare is a federal program. So that minimum is going to be the case regardless of what state you're in. Now, if you're doing Medicaid or private duty, the barrier is going to be lower because you may only be doing, private work where you're billing the patient directly. So you might have a net weekly payment term, or you could even mandate that they prepay you 2 weeks, 4 weeks in advance so that you're able to kind of carry it that way. So on a state-to-state basis, and that's the thing, it's like, that's a state program. So on a state-to-state basis, they're going to kind of have different guidelines and different recommendations. Because when you're putting in your application, they want you to do like a complete business plan and financial projections for 3 years. So they want you to kind of show that with your nurses on staff, with your administrator on staff, and your projected patient growth, that you're going to be able to carry out for that 3 years with the amount of money that you have. And they want it to be realistic. You can't say, okay, I have $25,000 and in the first month, I'm going to, generate $250,000 of revenue, which results in, I don't know, $30,000 profit. And we're going to continue at that pace. And by the end of the first year, we're going to be a multi-million-dollar agency. Is it possible? Yeah. Is it likely? No. So that they don't want you to kind of have like this false hope, and they put in a lot of time to license you. So the last thing they want is an agency holding a license that can't perform, or because they still have to audit you at some sort of fixed interval. So they want at least the foundation to be right so that you can survive, right? Not only as a business, but that you're able to survive and thrive as a business and fill this void that's needed to service the community. What's the point of spending the time to review your policies, inspect your facility, license you, if in 6 months you decide, I'm not gonna do this home care thing.
Right.
So they have to kind of create something to keep you, interested.
To really vet you, make sure you're in it for the long haul. It seems like home health, like that's for the long haul.
It's for the long haul, depending on how you design your business, because you can design it with the mentality of, I'm trying to grow this business and sell it to a bigger player. So I'm trying to get to 200, 400 patients and sell it for, I don't know, you probably get like 6 to 8 million for that. So you can say, hey, I'll sell it for 6 or 8 million, and that's my hustle. I start them and I sell them, right? I flip home care agencies. So that could be your strategy, and it's somebody else's long-term goal to accumulate and service more clients. So it really depends.
You all post any questions that you have for Karl if you want to know the difference between home care agency versus staffing agency. Because I'm asking all the questions now. I do have another one. I wanted to know, from the owner's perspective, is it easier to talk to facilities or to get facilities on board through a staffing firm, or is it easier to find clients? Or is it pretty much just a different way of doing it? Does that make sense?
It's different because, all right, so for me to get my first contract when I started my staffing firm in Long Island, I think it took me about 6 weeks. And that process was literally just cold call in all the nursing homes in Long Island. I got the list off of the Department of Health website, picked up, called to speak with the administrator, called to speak with the director of nursing, called to speak with the staffing coordinator, asked them what's up, how are things going, what I could do for them, etc. Those that were interested, some of them was like, we don't use agencies. And then you could try to rebut them at that point. But if they're giving you like the cold, like we don't do agencies and kind of trying to brush you off, you could try to convince them to let you in and give a presentation on the benefits of using agency nurses, and ask, just do a sponsored lunch or something like that with CEO, CFO, administrator, director of nursing, head of human resources, get them in a room together, feed them, and try to convince them, right? That might cost you more money than you'd like. You're better off maybe going to the next facility, or kind of learning which facilities are already using agencies and then just trying to get on their list, because no one agency is satisfying all their needs. That'd be great if they were, but it's usually not that way. They usually have a couple different agencies in there, and they're kind of just letting everybody know these are our openings for the month. Help.
Yeah.
So it's
Because
different.
I worked in one place through 2 different agencies before, based on who was paying more that day. So
yeah,
they do use different agencies.
Yep. And they, because they just need to fill their shifts. So if you're gonna solicit, it's straight cold calling. That's gonna be your easiest route. Pick up the phone, talk to somebody, and just say, hey, this is who I am. This is my company. This is what we do. We specialize in LPNs, RNs, CNAs, X-ray techs, respiratory therapists, you name it, whatever your niche is, physical therapists, whatever. Are you in need of staff? This is what we do. If they're interested, they'll say, yeah, we're interested. And it's like, okay, so let me send you our contract and rate sheet. You can review that. And if we need to have a follow-up call or set up a meeting to discuss some of the details, I'll be more than happy to do that. Sometimes the facilities are using agencies so frequently, it's just like, send a contract. They review it, they sign it, or they come back with what they want to pay. You could do it all by phone and fax, never stepping one foot into the facility, and then whatever. Some of them may even ask you, can you send me like a censored resume of who you have ready to go? Because I don't want to sign this contract with you and you don't have staff, right? Mm-hmm. So let me get a look at what you're working with, and if there's people that we can use that are available, then we'll sign this contract and we can start staffing immediately. So you'll get different responses, but it's important for you to obviously have some bare bones staff, like even if it's you, right? So one of my first X-ray contract was me. I was an X-ray tech, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I could get a contract as an X-ray technologist. And I actually got my first contract X-raying a patient in a hospital. I was working with her, and she's like, yeah, you're really nice. She was like, I work at an orthopedic practice, outpatient, and sometimes we need somebody to fill in because we only have one X-ray tech, and she's old and she's looking to kind of semi-retire. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I own a staffing firm and I've been looking to get an X-ray contract. She was like, you know what? Here's my email. I'll push it over to the doctor. I'll try to at least get you in.
Wow.
Boom, converted into my first one. And then my college, what do you call those guys? The guys who went to college with me, my classmates, yeah, my classmates, I started letting them know what I had going on. If they were interested in, I started getting them some positions. And at least I knew that for myself, if there was a need, I could fill the need, right? And there were times where that happened. Like I would get a call out of nowhere and it's like, you staff X-ray techs? Like, yeah, we need one tomorrow. And if I was free, tomorrow I went and at least built that relationship. So if you're that licensed professional, you can at least staff yourself so you don't look stupid when they call on your company to provide coverage. And then at the same time, especially in the hospital and nursing home setting, you could go in there and start recruiting the nurses that they have who are looking for OT. Be like, yo, I could put you on at another facility. Are you interested? This is, I started this company. That's why I'm working here. And just be honest, because, you might meet a nurse there who's like, I've always been interested in starting this. And you might be able to get a partner out of it. You might find somebody who's willing to recruit on your behalf and promote within the facility for you. So tip, I guess, number one is be able to staff yourself, right? If you're going to own a staffing firm, use your skills, and that way you can make the impression, you can set the standard for what your staff is like, and build that relationship. So after you make that initial phone call and you kind of negotiate the terms and conditions of your contract, you're going to want to negotiate obviously the rate and the frequency and pay. Obviously, the shorter the frequency and pay, the better it is for you, because you're not having to float nurses' salaries for that long, right? If you're floating 5 RNs full time for a month, it's going to be costly, and you're not getting reimbursed. So you're going to need a means to pay them, right? And a lot of the companies that do like invoice advances, they try to do a credit check on the facility, and the facility might not really cooperate with their credit check. So then you won't be able to factor that invoice. So that leaves you in a situation thinking, oh, I could have gotten the money from this lender, but the lender has their underwriting principles that they need to follow. Right. That if it doesn't match, they won't lend. Or you have some kind of predatory lenders. They'll probably lend you at 1% interest per month, which isn't bad. It's just a 1% off of what you're charging, or 2% off of what you're charging, and they'll do it. Especially if they understand the industry, they'll know that they're going to get reimbursed for the most part, so they'll front the payroll. After that, it's really just making sure that you keep the relationship strong between the facility and your staff. You talk to your staff. You weed out, the horrible workers. There's some nurses who are only agency workers because they're trash.
I'm not trash though.
No. Yeah, your situation is you want freedom. You want the ability to craft and pick and choose where you work and not be dependent on it. I got that impression.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there's some really crappy ones that can't get a job anywhere or can't keep a job, so they just bounce around the staffing firm, world, and everybody knows them and everybody doesn't want them. So that happens. Yeah, you get some people they're like, this guy, he was here from 2 agencies and walked out on the middle of his shift twice. Never send them. If this is the quality that you have, then I'm really nervous about what kind of agency you're running. Yeah. So that's why I think it's a good idea to start with friends, people that people who are gonna give the effort because of the relationship with you. And then kind of scale up and take on new people. And then there's a whole nother school of thought and a whole nother lesson on team building and how to recruit. I'm actually doing my next video on how to start a home care agency is focused on team building and the process of hiring an employee, and kind of how to put it together and what I look for to kind of make sure that person's values are in sync with your values and they see the world the same as you. So the culture is right and the pickup is correct. But once you have the contract,
ENTP life,
ENTP. Yeah. So another thing is when you're getting started with the staffing firm, it's something that I left out actually. You're gonna need insurance. So you're gonna need workers' comp insurance, and you're gonna need your malpractice insurance. Now, a lot of the staffing firms mandate that you carry your own policy, and it's usually cheap for nurses, like $100, $200 a year. Do you have to maintain your own NSO policy at your agency? No, they cover you. Yeah. So sometimes they'll make you have your own policy, but workers' comp you're going to have because you are in fact their employer. So you need to maintain your own policy, and they're going to want to, typically the nursing facilities that understand what's going on, they're going to say, look, you need to provide us with your workers' comp policy so that we can justify to the workers' compensation inspector or the auditor who comes that these people are covered through your workers' comp if there's ever any questions. So workers' comp is going to be needed in malpractice and general liability. So that could add to your cost, your startup cost, but you can kind of turn that on effective the day that you got your first contract. So you don't need to necessarily have it until someone says yes. So you can get quoted and just have the start date open, and then once you get started, call the insurance broker and say, okay, it's effective today, and they'll either give you a monthly rate or something like that, and you start right there.
Okay, for the workers' comp.
Mm-hmm. For all of them, workers' comp, malpractice, and general liability.
Okay.
And disability, all of that.
A lot of information, yeah. This one you got to go check out Karl's channel. He's very detail oriented, very thorough. Like you don't get this type of information for free, in my opinion. Just from what I've seen, people don't put this out there. Like you said, it's a fear thing.
Yeah, the answer to that, like it is a fear thing, because how much you put into getting started, but it does. No matter how much information you put out there, it takes special people to execute on the ideas.
Yep.
I mean, every little secret that exists in the world is now on the internet. There's no secret. If you want to learn how to start up a bank, you can learn how to start that online. If you want to learn how to start up a VC firm, it's there. If you want to learn how to code and be a software engineer, you could learn the entire thing. So there's no real barrier to entry as far as knowledge is concerned. It's just that, are people going to actually draft policies for 5 years? No. And the type of person who would is going to seek it out and do it anyway, whether or not you're willing to share the information with them. So I'd rather share the information with people, and if there's someone who is going to move and shake anyway, it puts me as kind of like an authority on the subject, right? So that when they have a question, when they're looking for consultation, when they're looking for software, when they're looking for help, when they're looking for a strategic partner, it's the same dude who gave them the guidance on how to get started in the first place. So there's already this like established trust and rapport there. Even if I've never met this person, that person may get me into a hospital. They may get me into a new state that I wasn't considering. They may even bring information to me. They may be the director of a hospital, and they're looking to test out a new strategy for discharging patients that have a home care need. They're tired of just kind of working with the agencies in the area. They want to have a direct relationship, and they've seen my video, they've seen our growth, and they're interested in what we're doing. You never know where that little video will take you. So for me, it also is a way for me to hold myself accountable to what I'm saying, right? If I say I'm going to show you what it's like to go from the idea to public offering or acquisition, I'm too afraid to get called out for not doing what I said, right? So that's like, damn, people are watching. People are watching, Karl. Stay on point, stay focused, stay in line with what you said. And if you're going to pivot, explain why, right? And at least say, hey, this is what happened. Blew the company up, ran out of money before I got the traction I was looking for. So advice to you, starting, maybe you need 200K to start, or something like that. There's a lesson to be learned there for everybody. So I think by putting it out there, I help people get over a hurdle, and I help build future relationships for myself. And as far as how do I get back from it, I don't know. If one day somebody comes along and says, I followed your method all the way, and now I'm running a home care agency with 1,000 patients or something along those lines, I could at least claim I had something to do with that, right? Even though they did it all, I could at least be like, yeah, success story, ENTP life success story.
That's the way. That's how you are successful. You all like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, I think that's a good way to look at things. Because that's how me and you met, is through YouTube, through just you sharing a video talking about 503k loans.
203k.
203k loans. Why do I always say 503k?
Yeah, exactly.
You put information out there, and I was like, oh, and then you came and looked at my channel, and then boom.
Yeah, and it's that simple. It's like I put information out, and someone on the other end is on YouTube talking about one of my other industries that I'm exposed to. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I like what she's doing. How can I actually share some information that I see is missing there, right? I saw you focusing heavily on nursing, and I was like, but there's these other career paths for people who may be squeamish about blood or like body fluids and things like that. So what else can you do that's in healthcare that people are missing? So that's what I wanted to kind of contribute. And that's just the way things work. You never know where. It's all about bumping into people, right? The more you connect with people or you touch people, the more you're gonna learn, the more that you're gonna be exposed to, and it only makes you like a better person. So
I definitely agree. Like, the internet, YouTube has changed my whole life and like my whole perspective on things. It's really a whole world wide web out there. Like, for real. Like, it's, yeah, like you can really get connected. But we're off subject. But
yeah.
But let me look at some of these questions. So
sure.
So Sylvia Austin, what's up, Sylvia? Says home care aid question. Without ruining a startup reputation before it starts, how do we avoid undesirable clients, drug addicts, horrible living conditions, etc.?
How do you avoid them?
Yes. Is that possible?
Is she still on?
Are you still on? Well, I think we got a little bit of a lag, but I think she's still on. Did you want to ask her something directly?
Yeah, because those patients will be the ones that blast you on Google too.
Like a good, oh no, they say like bad or
yeah. Hostile, bad patients. Well, we specialized in taking those patients on. So if you wanted to avoid them, I would say work with like private pay clients, right? Because usually the drug addicts, ones that are living in horrible conditions, are going to be on programs typically. You do get high net worth people who are duping the system on there, but that's not the majority. So if you wanted to avoid a certain population that's going to be problematic, target the people who have more money. If you find out the neighborhoods that are a little more desirable, work with nursing facilities there, directly work with doctors and let them know what services you provide, if they have any patients that they feel are a good fit. So you can isolate the neighborhoods that you want and that you feel have the demographic of patient that you want, and reach out to them however you can. You could do targeted ads on Google, targeted ads on Facebook, direct mail to people over a certain age that you feel may be chronically ill. That's if you're going to, that's how you could reach them directly and targeted. Also, there's long-term care insurance coverage, not like managed long-term care where you're dealing with like managed Medicaid or managed Medicare. I'm talking about like the long-term care insurance that people purchase when they're, sold into some program that a financial planner is selling them, where they're doing their retirement, their annuity. And sometimes the long-term care is just kind of like an add-on, right? This like that people aren't thinking about. So it's like, oh, you can buy into this life insurance policy with this, accidental dismemberment policy, with this long-term care policy, the long-term care policy kicks in at this year of your whole life plan. So it gets bundled in. And those people who are doing that financial planning and obviously paid for it, when it's time for them to use it, they're like, wait a second, I got this long-term, I get gets mail about long-term care. So you can align yourself with either financial planners and like insurance brokers who sell the product, because usually the person that sold them on it is going to get one of the first phone calls of, how do I use this? Right? Or estate planners, right? Estate planners are good for you to like build relationships with us, because whenever they have somebody who's trying to exercise their long-term care insurance policy, or they're gonna, these are the people that they trust, their attorneys, their financial advisors. So that's usually their first phone call when it's time for them to do something. If they don't call the company themselves, they might ask, do you have a recommendation for a home care agency? Because the way it works with the long-term care insurance providers, they usually are reimbursing the patient or the insured, right? So they'll say, in order for us to pay you, what we promised that we'd pay, the $2,000, $4,000, whatever they signed up for a month, the agency needs to be licensed in your state, or the agency needs to be accredited by this accreditation agency, whether it's JACO or whoever else. So as long as they meet these guidelines, all you need to do is submit your invoices to us, we reimburse them, or you pay and you submit your receipts to us and we pay.
Okay.
Right? So then they're going to be like, well, who do I go to? And they say, well, it's not our job to recommend anybody. You need to pick who you feel comfortable with. So what do? A lot of them can't navigate the web, so they don't go there. So they're kind of stuck. They're like, they ask their friends, so if you put yourself in contact with the people who are getting these type of calls frequently, then if there's 100 estate planners in your city, then you should know all of them, right? And make sure that they know you and what you're providing, and remind them frequently that you have this service that you can provide. And that's how you can avoid that. If you start contracting with the city, you start contracting with managed long-term care, you're gonna get rougher, more what you consider problematic patients. On the flip side of that, when you're dealing with high net worth people, they're going to want RN level support for the price of a home health aide, and they don't get it, and they're going to be calling you every single day.
So there's always a caveat.
I'll tell you something like, do you think you could send me a home health aide that is a little more traditional? And what do you mean by traditional? More Americanized. Okay, yeah. So English. I'm having a hard time understanding them. It's like, okay, I want a native English speaker, and then between the ages of this and this, and college educated, and they'll start getting like very particular, and it's like, for this price, this doesn't exist, right? You're not getting that. So you're either going to have to come up in price, or because what you're looking for is a college educated nurse, and that's going to cost this. So if that's what you want, then I can help you out. But for your budget, I can't provide that. So it's a different sort of pain to deal with. It's like, not pain, but it's a different sort of, different sort of pain to deal with. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have to meet the standards, because you're getting, it's coming out their pocket. They're not sending it off to somebody, it's coming out their pocket. That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that you said that. So yeah, Sylvia, you were on. There you go. You got your question answered. So Sylvia also, well, you know what? Let me find another question. Hold on, Sylvia. Let's see. Let's see. So Mega Beautiful Truth. This is a little bit on the employee end, but you might know the answer, Carl. If you are a home health aide to a family member under an agency, can you use that on your resume in the future?
Yeah.
So I guess let's see. Mega Beautiful Truth was only saying that because it's family, so you feel like you can't use it, but you work for them. If you got paid legally, I feel like
Yeah, it's experience. It's relevant experience. You were supervised by the home health agency. You dealt with the nurses. You know how to follow a care plan. You know, you could specify what that patient's condition was and what your day-to-day was for that patient. Let's just say the patient's bedbound. That's a lot different than dealing with a mobile Alzheimer's patient, or someone with that's insulin dependent, diabetes. You specify what their condition was and how you dealt with it. That gives a good sense of what your experience level is.
Perfect. Let's see. Ju says, how do you attract staff for staffing agencies? You went over this a little bit.
How do I attract
staff for staffing agencies?
Go with, I would say, the most trafficked job site is Indeed. So start with Indeed. Craigslist actually produces as well. Facebook ads, Google ads, those will cost you money. Indeed will cost you money too. At first, they let you post for free, and then they upsell you later on. LinkedIn, if you're dealing with more professional staff, so your nurses and above, people who are carrying professional licenses are typically on LinkedIn. So you can either promote on LinkedIn or try to connect with people on LinkedIn. Word of mouth works well. Hitting up college job fairs, right? When you have that graduating class coming out, hitting them up. I've flyered the parking lots of nursing homes and hospitals where staff parking is.
That's kind of savage, like, Carl. You trying to take their employees?
Well, yeah. Yeah. So it's like just flying every car. What else can you do? Where else can you find employees? Yeah, talk about what you're doing to everybody. That's my tip. You never know who's listening to you on the other side. Sometimes it's your friend that just wants to brag that their friend is starting a business, and they're bragging to someone who happens to be a nurse who's looking for work, or who's the parent of a nurse who just graduated from nursing school, and your connect is there. So put yourself, the name of the game is visibility. The more people see you, the more likely you are to get a hit. So you have to kind of get as many eyes and ears as possible. So using things like the internet obviously is mass, like you're able to reach so much more than you were years ago. So you got to just play the game of how do I put myself in front of the type of person that I'm looking for? Where am I going to find? That's why I was flyering nursing homes, right? If I go to a nursing home and there's a staff parking lot, the people who are working there are going to be nurses, nurse aides, administrative staff. Everybody's getting a flyer. Hopefully somebody acts on it.
Mm-hmm. And don't, like he said, don't discount word of mouth. That's the only way I've ever heard about any agency. I've never seen them advertise, but I've always heard about it through other nurses. So.
Yeah.
Word of mouth is big. So be good to your employees, and they'll be good to you as far as letting people know about what you're doing. Let's see.
Like there's some agencies that pay their nurses the same day. You complete the shift, bam, the money's in your debit card account or whatever the case may be. And some people like that. They want that nightclub money.
Right, instant gratification.
So it's like, this agency does this. It's like, word, my agency pays me bi-weekly. It's like, okay, well.
Let's see what else. Bi-weekly. Oh my gosh, I would hate that, to get paid bi-weekly.
But sometimes you got to do it because you gotta delay,
right,
until you're getting reimbursed. So
yeah. It seems like with everything you're saying, it's like you really got to think about that waiting period that you might have, and really think about how you're going to come up with that money.
Correct.
Like what you're going to do. Like,
yeah, you're going to need to have a runway. You absolutely need it, or you're going to need to have a rich uncle or somewhere you could some place you could tap it. One thing you can do is like cash advance yourself on a credit card. for instance. You have a high limit credit card, you might have to swipe that cash to yourself just to make it. That might buy you a month, you pay the minimum payment, accrue the interest for the month's time, and you swiped 40 grand to yourself. And that's what you might have to do, and hope they don't close your account next month. You know,
but over time, hopefully you're not chasing your tail. Like at some point you have to.
Yeah, at some point, which is a good point. Be frugal. You know, no matter what, be frugal. If you're going to invest in anything, invest in your growth. Don't spend the money on, you know, the new car. Don't spend the money on the new house, because it's when you need, when credit, like right now, the banks are pulling back, right? And this is what blew me up in 2008. Financial crisis hit. I was heavily dependent on line of credit. All my line of credit, like one day after the next. Washington Mutual went under, got acquired by Chase. Chase was like, this line of credit is dead. Valley National Bank, line of credit, dead. I was like, what am I gonna do? You know, and the thing is, it's like, I depend on that money. So now I got to go to my nurses and say, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna be able to pay you till next month, because that's when I get paid, and show them, like sit them down, show them the contract. Like, look, I get paid this. This is what happened. I'm gonna pay you. I promise you. But this is what it is now. You know, so that's when you get cracked. Like I said, you got to swipe your credit cards and do whatever you can, borrow money from friends. It was, you know, I was what, 26 at the time. So it's like, what the hell? What is this? You know, and things seemed good. You know, it always seems great right before the crash. So like right now, you know, I know people, mortgage lenders have stopped. I know banks that aren't lending anymore that used to, like I used to get phone calls about, hey, would you like to draft some money or a line of credit for this, this, and this? Those phone calls have stopped, right? Because they're not able to lend to me because they're not getting paid. And the person that they're selling the debt to is not buying anymore. So they're like, all right, we got no money to lend. Game over. So, you know, do not spend your money on crap. That rule number one of life. Don't spend your money on crap. Spend your money on things that will make you more money. If it's not making you more money, don't spend it. Unless you have unlimited money and you get to that point, but you should spend the rest of your money investing in yourself, your education, and your business. And the other things, you know what I mean, that end up becoming valued $0, handbags, shoes, food and drink, cars, they all go to zero. Don't spend your money on that. Spend your money on something that's going to make you some money. And if it's your business, then spend it on new talent, spend it on more marketing dollars, more ad dollars, so that you're able to drive up how much money you're making.
Preach, Karl. Preach to me too. Yes, and you bounce back from that.
Yeah. So
and then, by the way, Karl is also a real estate investor too. So he has all of that over on his channel as well, ENTP Life. So go check him out.
Yeah, and I was talking about that on the channels. Like, I've been there, and I was saying it since last fall. Like, I don't feel good about how things are going economically. I'm seeing signs that I saw back in 07, 08, where I'm getting the phone calls. Hey, do you want credit? Hey, do you want credit? I'm getting approved for ridiculous limits. Okay, I'll take it. I'm not going to count on it. You know, I'm not going to count on it as like, okay, I got this credit, now I'm going to spend it. But I'll take it because I might as well have it. You might not cut me if my usage isn't high. They cut you when they're concerned that you're going to end up defaulting and you're maxing out your cards, so they'll cut you. But if your limits are low and it's well balanced and well rotated, they won't cut you. So I'm like, all right, I'll take all that. But this feels the same. People are confident about buying homes. People are buying cars. People are buying things they shouldn't. So it's like, all right, this feels the same. And my advice was stay tight, stay cautious. Because when the difference between then and now is I kept my expenses much lower, like my living expenses. And that's why I wanted to move to Colombia. It's like, yeah, I want to spend as little money as possible on maintaining my person. I need shelter, I need food. Where can I do that, you know, the cheapest in the world and still be able to earn my money here in the States. So I was trying to get out of here. What point am I making? The point is, if you keep your overhead low, then you're able to do things when the crisis comes that doesn't completely gut you and doesn't eliminate you. Right. So that's something to pay attention to. And it's like, whether it's a small apartment or, a house that's smaller than, one of my partners in my real estate company, his wife, who's also a nurse, dying to get a bigger house, right? They're a 4-unit family. They have a 3-bedroom house. The house does its job, payment's nice and low. They're more than halfway paid off on it. She wants to expand, go and get a bigger house, twice the size. And he's like, absolutely not, right? And he owns real estate with me. So he's like, yo, why am I going to spend money on this, right? I'd rather spend my extra money picking up another rental property and picking up another rental property and picking up another rental property. So eventually you can stop working and we can afford this bigger house that you want on someone else's dime. But if we go and move into this house now, we're going to be paying for this till we're 67. And then what? Then we're going to have a big house with no kids in it. So, but that's a common mistake that we're trained to think that's like the way. Like he always laughs. He's like, I had another employee come in and tell me they're thinking about getting a starter home. He's like, what the hell is that? What does that mean? It's like, you're starting to do what? To get a bigger house? Like, that's your goal, is to keep getting bigger houses? And then when does it end? When you can't cut your lawn anymore? I don't know. I know I'm getting off topic. I'm sorry, man. It's just something I care about.
Good information, though. No, it's good information, because the American way we're seeing right now that it's not necessarily the best way, or the most sustainable way, I should say.
The whole country's check to check.
Yeah. Let's see. Amanda P says, you might end up having one of these. So Amanda P says, does he have a program to teach the public on how to start in both areas? In
nurse staffing and home care?
Yes.
Okay. So right now, the only thing that I have is my YouTube channel. So I'm doing a weekly installment of how to start a home care agency. I did just finish wrapping up a training course called Killing the American Dream, which actually, we just were talking about, like killing that old idea of the American dream and thinking about what the American dream used to be, which is, come here and make your money. But that's on real estate. And I've been thinking about, and it's 14 hours, 14 episodes of detailed information on how to, from nothing to management of a rental property, like for the full thing, renovations, everything. So that's going to be releasing, I think within 4 weeks, maybe, I don't know, something along those lines, because we're setting up the whole site now. And I've been thinking about adding more to that Killing the American Dream, like umbrella, which are other educational courses on industries that I understand. So that'd be home health, healthcare staffing. I also have, an Airbnb business, like I would guess. I have a software production company. I don't know what I do a lot of different things. I might do like a stock trading course, because I spent some time doing that. So, short answer is that you can follow, my weekly installments on how to start a home care agency, but that's as I'm doing it. So it's not like focused on step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I probably won't have that out for a while. A staffing firm is a lot easier to set up. So I'm more likely to do how do you start a staffing firm, like a staffing firm or an outsourcing operation. I'm more likely to do something like that, because I could probably shrink that down into like 6 hours or so of content and push that out. So, I would just subscribe and stay tuned and follow what I'm doing. But that would be how I could condense it down so you're not following me week by week. It might take you a longer time to get all the information you want.
Okay. So go follow his channel to start off with. Let's see, what else we got? We can probably get in a few more questions because what time are you on the, what time is it where you're, it's 9:56 where you're at, huh?
Yep.
Let's see. And Karl is doing all this with a 1-year-old. How does he do that? I don't know.
Oh man, we're living under quarantine, so
Yeah.
we're good.
Let's see. Okay, this is a good question. Sylvia asked, what's a good starting system for payroll, inexpensive but efficient?
What is a good startup payroll system?
I guess like a payroll system to have.
A payroll provider?
I'm guessing that's where she's coming from, yeah.
All right, so I think one of the cheapest to get started with, and that's fairly good, is a company by the name of Gusto. Let me just make sure that's right. I think it's Gusto Payroll. I might have used them once. Yeah, Gusto, Gusto Payroll, because they let you kind of pay per an employee as you go, sort of thing. And like the main two players in the country are Paychex and ADP. ADP to the point that they report payroll numbers as economic data, or that's how much payroll they're pushing out. They could tell you how many people are working part-time, full-time, and they could give you a good measure of the world. So ADP has a startup platform called ADP Run. And I know this because I used ADP Run. So that's from 0 to 50 employees. And once you get above 50, they start trying to push you up into ADP Workforce. But ADP Run is way more user-friendly. And ADP Run, I also have integrated with my home healthcare software, so that when you run payroll on the software, it produces like the output file that's needed for ADP Run. But since I upgraded from ADP Run to ADP Workforce, I didn't like Workforce at all. And then I eventually transitioned to Paychex Flex. And that also directly feeds into our software on-time ITS. So I would say cheapest solution and easiest to get started will probably be Gusto. If you want a more robust service provider with, that people will come out and meet you and talk to you and sell you on their plans, ADP and Paychex. I think I like Run as a platform. Paychex is pretty user-friendly as well, Paychex Flex. So that's what I would recommend. But though ADP and Paychex are going to come at a higher cost.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at some of these comments. Let's see. All right, we can do one more question. Try to find one. Let's see. I think you kind of talked about this, but it might be different. What insurances are needed for home health? So you said for staffing, you need workers' comp, malpractice, and general insurance.
General liability. So if somebody slips and falls down your stairs at your facility, you're covered. Right? That's like a slip and fall at your office. Right? So you want to make sure you're covered there. So that general liability will cover that.
And that's pretty much the same for home health and for staffing.
Yep, you're gonna need workers' comp, malpractice, general liability.
Okay. All right. Well, I think I got most of the questions out the way. Did you have anything you want to conclude with everything, Karl? You got a lot of information out already, so I took notes.
Anything to conclude?
for people who might be watching this and be like, this is a lot. I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. It's a lot. I thought I could just, get in and keep it going. But what would you say for somebody who, is kind of overwhelmed by it and they just they're willing to put in the work, but they're just like, I don't know.
Find a partner.
Find a partner.
Find a partner. Yeah. I would say, if you find a partner, find somebody who's trying to get started. Hang out in the comment section of my videos, because you'll see people saying, hey, I'm looking to start a home care agency. Do you have any advice for me? Ask them what state, and make sure you know what you're bringing to the table. Maybe sometimes having someone to share the burden with or share the journey with is good. Work within the type of agency from an administrative standpoint, to even interns, see what it feels like. What is it like to be there? And maybe they'll give you their policies, or even they might be interested in expanding their operation and set you up in another city that they want to expand into. And, you may get an opportunity there. You may, like, we even took on a partner early on who came in and said that he could help us expand the business. And if he did to a certain point, then we'd compensate him in equity. And he did.
Wow.
And now, he made a partner out of that. So there's a lot of ways, like, you could get involved you could jump onto an existing, sometimes, to be honest with you, a lot of people who start home care agencies are nurses with no business experience. And oftentimes they're the top earner in their household. They don't even have support from their partners. They don't have support from anybody. So they might need money. They might just need somebody to just be there and will be willing to entertain a partnership with you, because you're willing to go out there and do something with them, or you're willing to fill a void that they have. So if starting everything from scratch if this sounds like too much for you, it may be, but you still may have some really good tools and skills that are desirable to somebody else. For instance, with AidBook, the company that I'm launching now, or that has launched, I guess, we just hired our director of nursing, and I think she's a rock star overall, but she was interested in working with a new company because she wanted to have truly an impact and a say in the direction of where things were going. And we needed a director of nursing on our founding team. It's somebody who could stick and grow with the company, even to the point that we're trying to take it to. Right. So she was specifically looking to get involved in the shop and have like that risk of owning a business or being a partner in a business, having that same exposure, that same uncertainty. She was interested in that. And that's what she was seeking out. So, you could put yourself out there saying, looking for this position in this type of company when you're responding to posts on, Indeed or whatever else. So if you're the type of person who feels like, wow, this is maybe too much for me, or I'm undercapitalized or whatever, there's also other people who are looking to get into home health care who are very well capitalized and have no knowledge of nursing. Zero. They don't know anything. They just know there's money to be made here. I want in, right? So you could say, hey, I have the knowledge of nursing. I have, or whatever you have, whether it's money or the information, and you guys can match up. And they'll say, you know what? You don't need to know how to start all this. We're paying for the consultant. They're going to take care of this. We just need you to be awesome at nursing, right? We need you to, do you have the experience? Do you understand? Have you worked in this area? How would you organize your team? Have you ever put together a team like this from scratch? No, you haven't, but have you worked in that system? Can you replicate that system? How big, what tools, what like established protocols do they have in place that you would implement here, right? Those are the type of things that people would be looking for. You know, for me, I have the experience to identify what I'm looking for out of my nurse. And she actually had the experience to question me on what is my business model? How do we plan on generating revenue? How do we differentiate ourselves from the competitors? Like critical thinking questions. While other people are just like, hey, I'm just happy to, you know, work in this role. They're not the same type of person who's good for a startup. The type of person who's good for a startup is going to have that business acumen as well. And that ability to deal with uncertainty, that ability to build teams, that ability to make changes. You know, there's some director of nurses that can only work in an established system. They can't design the system, but they know how to fit the role. So if you're looking to get started, identify what that strength is in you and find somebody who's lacking that and who's strong in an area that you're weak, and partner up somehow.
That's what's up. I like that. Like, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I mean, I feel like in a general way of saying it, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if whatever you putting out there and whatever you're good at, if it's meant for you to do it, you're going to be partnered up with somebody who's going to make it happen. So I appreciate that. So you all go over to Karl's channel, ENTP Live, where he's showing you all how he is starting from scratch in Florida, coming from the East Coast, talking about how he's starting his home care agency. He's taking you along the ride with him, and go ahead and go over there and follow his channel. And if you all have any more questions, put them in the comments section. Thank you all so much for coming on, and thank you, Karl, for coming on. It was very informative. I really, really appreciate you coming on the channel. It was good information.
Anytime you want me on here to drop some gems, I'll be out here.
All right.
I like talking, as you can see.
Well, at least it's all good information. It's all good information needed, and people do not talk about this. Once again, this is not out here in the streets for free.
Definitely not.
All right. Thanks again, Karl.
Take care. Have a good night.
Peace.
Bye-bye.